Hello and welcome to an introduction to Georgian verbs. In this video I'll be going over how they work and how to conjugate them in most tenses. Later on I'll make an advanced video on Georgian verbs for any hungry linguists out there. In the description I have useful charts and resources, and I'll ask you to open them up as I go along. They're convenient Imgur links, so there should be no problem opening them up. Let's get started. In Georgian, there are 4 types of verbs that differ in how they are conjugated and their general meaning. Type 1 verbs are transitive, which means they take a direct object. Here we have nachla, which means see, kaketeba, which means to do, and zebna, which means to look for. They're transitive because you can see someone, you can do something, you can look for someone. It takes an object. But to really understand transitive verbs, it helps to take a look at intransitive verbs, which are covered by verb type 2. Type 2 verbs are intransitive, which means they don't take a direct object. The examples here are gazurda, shirbili, and tsakzeva, which means to rise, run, and fall respectively. You can't rise somebody, you can't run somebody, and you can't fall somebody, you just do it. You can't do it to somebody. If you can't do it to somebody, then it's intransitive. Type 3 verbs are also mostly intransitive verbs, but they do have some transitive verbs. They mostly cover things such as movement, weather, and sound. They are very similar in conjugation to type 1 verbs, but otherwise are quite different. The examples here are khumroba, sernoba, and knesa. Type 4 verbs are conjugated extremely differently from the other types and mostly denote feelings and endurance states of being. Sikwaruli, sovna, and shetsiveva are some example verbs. Now click the link in the description labeled Subject and Direct Object Markers in Georgian. You will see this table. This tells you which letters mark the subject and object for verb types 1 through 3. Don't worry about verb type 4 for now. So our first example verb is taketeba, which means to do. Notice that this taketeba is the dictionary form that the verb comes in. This is referred to as the mastar, which is a verbal noun. A verbal noun is a noun that comes from a verb, such as swimming is fun or your running was impressive. Let's have a closer look at the mastar, and oh by the way, ignore that A at the end, that really doesn't show up anywhere else except the mastar. Each verb in Georgian is assigned a preverb and a thematic suffix, which is basically just the prefix and the suffix. You have to learn it by heart, but it is learnable. Multiple verbs can have the same preverb or thematic suffix, and there's an optional link in the description of common preverbs and thematic suffixes. Preverbs can actually change the meaning of a verb root slightly. For example, modis means he is coming, midis means he is going, adis means he's going up the stairs, and chamodis means he is arriving. So it's the same root definition of go, it's just different types of going. If you have any experience with Russian, this is the same as with iti, because you have viti, which means to come out, priti, which means to arrive, and uiti, which means to leave. This doesn't really happen with a thematic suffix, so don't worry about it. So we have our subject markers and our pronouns, we have our preverb and our thematic suffix. Now we just need to know which of the two to keep. For present tense, and this applies to all types of verbs, the preverb goes away but the thematic suffix stays. This is a basic template for type 1 verbs. But wait, what even is a version marker? Well, it adds an arbitrary meaning to the verb. It can be any vowel except for O inserted between the subject marker and the root of the verb, but some don't have one, namely type 3 verbs. It really doesn't do anything when it comes down to it, so think of it as preventing consonant clusters, which are so very common in Georgian. Without further ado, let's get going. The best way to learn these Georgian verbs is by doing. Mevaketeb. Congratulations, that's your first conjugation. Shen aketeb. Is aketebs. Chven vaketeb. Tukven aketeb. Isini aketeben. Alright, now for past tense. In past tense, the thematic suffix this time goes away and the preverb stays. The chart in the corner applies to this. So you go preverb, person marker, version marker, then root. Megava kete, because past tense for me begins with a V and ends with an E. Shen ga kete, man ga keta. Wait, What? What's man and mat doing there? See, Georgian has this thing called split ergativity, which means in different tenses, the subject and object can be expected to switch case. This happens in present and past. Open up the link in the description titled ergativity and have a look at this chart. In the past tense, the subject is in the ergative case and the object is in the nominative case. However, only is and isini, as far as pronouns go, actually change form. The rest stay, but with actual nouns like zachi, it usually ends in ma, so zachma. So now that we cleared that up, me gava kete, shen ga kete, man ga keta, chuen gava ketet, tlen ga ketet, and mat ga ketes. In the future tense, both the preverb and the thematic suffix are present. Basically, 99% of all Georgian verbs form their future by simply adding the preverb onto the present form. Me gava keteb, shen ga keteb, is ga ketebs, chen gava keteb, tlen ga keteb, isini ga keteb. So what about those extra screeves, the subjunctive, the optative, the conditional, or the imperfect? Well, open up the link in the description titled Extra Screeve Endings that tells you which letters to put at the end of certain verb forms. Well, which verb forms? Have a look at the series chart also in the description, and this tells us which screeve belongs to which series. For example, anything in the present series means these endings get glued onto the present form of the verb. So for example, conditional is under the future subseries, so we take the future form of a verb and glue the appropriate ending on. According to the chart, the ending for imperfect and conditional is di, so we take the future form megava keteb and add the di, so megava keteb di means I would do. It's in the conditional. So how do we even use these extra screeves? See, it's a bit complicated, but I'll do my best to explain it. The present and future subjunctive are used when you want to throw a verb out there, but you're not really sure if it'll happen or not. It's kind of potential. It's often used with the word rom for if statements. Rom amis vaketeb de skagijtebodi. Forgive my typo, that should be vaketeb de. So this means if I am doing this, he would go insane. So you're not actually doing it, you're just saying the possibility, you're not sure. Future subjunctive is the same thing, but you're framing it in the future. So it'd be like if I said, if I will do this, then he would go insane. Conditional is actually really simple. It's used when in English we'd use the word would. It's a condition. So, megava ketebdi magram shen chibi, which means I would do this, but you're complaining. Kind of makes sense why it's called conditional, because it expresses a condition. Now, imperfect's all about actions that have not been completed. They're still going on. They're ongoing or habitual. The habitual can kind of be formed with the word cholme. So, for example, means I do it every day. So you do it every day, but you're not done doing it. It's habitual, it's ongoing, it's repetitive, it's imperfect. Optative is a pretty complicated screeve. It has several uses. It's mostly used with the word that, like when as a conjunction, which is translated by the word rom. So if I were to say, it is good that you're doing this, it'd be kargia rom ka ketos. It's also used when you're saying in order to, so that's also used with rom. So if I were to say you have to be beautiful in order to do this, and finally, it combines with verbs when the word to is involved, such as I want to go or I need to go. So means I need to do it. Be careful, make sure that the subject is in the ergative, because optative is part of the aorist or past series, so it follows the same ergativity rules. Well, congratulations, you'll fly right through verb types 2 and 3 because the differences are fairly minor, barring irregular verbs. For type 2 verbs, you actually add a vowel after the phonetic suffix, which is really different from the other two types of verbs. So, the following vowels are added. I listed them there in order. So, before, the verb would just end in eb, but now we have ebi, eba, ebis, etc. So, this is a verb that means to lie, to tell an untruth, mot kleba. It translates as such. Nevit klebi, shen it klebi, is it kleba, shen vit klebit, klen it klebit, tini it klebian. So, another thing, lots of them might add an extra D before the eb. I can't really say it's irregular because lots of type 2 verbs do that, you just kind of have to know. Type 3 verbs, as you'll notice, do not include their preverb in the mastar because for all of them the preverb is E. So, you know what the preverb is always with type 3 verbs, and also there's no version marker, so that makes it easier. The only catch is in the future tense where ob turns into eb, but that's about it. For example, pikri, which means to think, in the present tense is mev pikrob, but then in the future it's me iv pikreb. Now for type 4 verbs. God. If verb types 1 through 3 are just normal people, then type 4 verbs are something else. First of all, numerous type 4 verbs are irregular, but luckily there aren't that many of them to begin with, and even then, most are common enough to where they'll be used a lot, so you'll get practice. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I got my subject markers to mark the subject, and although it's irregular, I provided myself with the phonetic suffix and root, so let's get conjugating. Me vutschela, shen schela, is schel. No, what are you doing? What, man? I was just conjugating it like normal. No, it's all wrong. You're doing it all wrong. Here, let's go back to our handy ergativity chart. If you notice, the subject is in the dative case, and the object is in the nominative case. At least it's for both present and past tense. But, what's with that mystery block? I'm sure you've been wondering what that is. The thing is, the third person object marker is kinda random between type 4 verbs. The most common are u and h, although the h can be omitted in both writing and speaking because it's basically silent anyways. For this particular verb, it's s. Alright, back to the verb now that we have that cleared up. Me mutschela, shen gutschela, mastschela, shen gutschela, twen gutschelat, and mastschelat. Past tense is pretty easy. Just add an a at the end for me, shen, mas, and chuen. The other two, tukven and mat, get a t at the end to mark the plural. The preverb isn't included in the mastar, so you just have to know that it's da. So you get me damscha, shen dagscha, and then mat dagschat, for example. Before I wrap this up, I just want to tell you one thing about why Georgian is actually pretty amazing. What if I told you that if you obey some rules, you can combine object markers and subject markers to essentially say entire sentences with one word? How does it work? Well, here are those rules. Obeying them, and I'm going to use nachva, which means to see, as an example. Obeying these rules, we have the normal mevchedav, and yes, I acknowledge that it's irregular. So when I say meshen v'chedav, it means I see you. The order is subject, object, verb. What if I told you that saying g'chedav means the exact same thing? Wait, what? What is this sorcery? Alright, so let's go back to our universal subject and object markers. And here are the two rules you have to know. A direct object cannot be used if the intended meaning is the person is doing it to themselves. So you can't say shen g'chedav, you have to use another word meaning self, and you may only use one prefix at a time, and only one suffix at a time, so you can't have both. You can't just say v'g'chedav. That doesn't work. So, according to the chart, we know the object is either shen or tikven, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's you either way. So we know that the object is you based on the g. but we don't know the subject. Okay, well, I just told you what the subject was. The subject is me, but let's see why. Obeying the first rule, it can't be shen or tukven, so those two are already eliminated. The subject markers for chuen and isini include a T at the end of the verb, and, well, I don't see a T anywhere, so those eliminate. Finally, there's no S at the end, which is required for is. So, looks like me is the winner. Wait a second. So do Georgians have to pause and solve some sort of logic puzzle every time someone talks? Well, no. You can clear out any ambiguity using context and pronouns. For example, saying me gchedav is a lot clearer than saying gchedav. I mean, yeah, you'll still be understood, but, help someone out. There might be a few lingering questions on type 4 verbs, because they are pretty confusing. So, the direct object marker for tukven is g when you're using it as part of a type 1 to 3 verb, but when the subject is a type 4 verb, it ends in a T all of a sudden? And why doesn't chven end in a T? I mean, it's plural, right? Well, when you're conjugating a type 4 verb, yes, it begins with G and ends with T because it's plural, because T is a plural marker. If you're just marking the object that's not a type 4 verb, it's just g. Because it's not that important to distinguish shen and tukven. I mean, in English, the word you is both singular and plural, and we get along just fine. So, then the other question is, if a T at the end denotes plural, why doesn't chven have it at the end, like in other verbs? That's because it has its own unique marker, gv, unlike verb types 1 through 3, where the T is the only thing setting it apart from the v. Well, congratulations! You now know about subject and object markers, ergativity rules, extra scrives, quote-unquote ergativity. Now you can now call yourself a Georgian. Go buy a papacha and eat some khachapuri. Well, not really. I still have to make the advanced video, but So one more thing. I highly recommend you check out Georgian Verbs Comprehensive by Liam Campbell. Just search it up on Google and you'll get it, definitely. It has full conjugation tables for many Georgian verbs, and many are irregular, so these rules you learn might not even apply, so I might want to reference the book. Anyways, for now, nachvamdis, chemi megobarebi.